All right, welcome back to CrushTalk, the podcast where your passions become conversations. Get ready for a deep dive, and I mean deep, into a story that's going to make you think twice about everything you thought you knew about Hollywood.
Ooh, that sounds juicy. I'm ready. Lay it on me.
We're talking Blake Lively, America's sweetheart, and Justin Baldoni. You know, the guy who directed that 5 Feet Apart movie.
Oh yeah, Mr. I'm a woke feminist filmmaker.
Yeah, well, buckle up because Lively is accusing him of some seriously messed up stuff behind the scenes of their new movie, It Ends With Us.
Ugh.
And get this, she's saying there was a whole smear campaign to trash her reputation after she spoke out.
Oh wow, this is getting good. Talk about a fall from grace, huh? So where are we getting all this info from? Did Lively spill the tea in an interview?
Not exactly. Our main source here is actually Lively's lawsuit, which is public, and we'll also be looking at some reporting from the New York Times, to see how they're covering it.
Makes sense. And of course, we can't forget the court of public opinion, right?
Exactly. We'll also be checking out what people are saying about all this on a pretty popular Reddit thread about the case. See what the internet sleuths are thinking.
Love it. So let's get down to it. What exactly is Lively accusing Baldoni of?
Well, she is alleging that Baldoni constantly crossed boundaries on set to the point where she felt like unsafe and just totally uncomfortable. And I'm not talking about like little things here.
Give me the details.
Okay, so she's claiming that he would repeatedly show her explicit content.
Like what? Behind the scenes footage from his other movies? Deleted scenes that were too racy?
Think way more graphic. The lawsuit says one of the things he showed her was a video, get this, of a producer's wife giving birth.
Whoa, hold on. A woman giving birth? What in the world does that have to do with making a movie?
Yeah, it's bizarre, right? Makes you wonder what was going through his head.
Totally. I mean, what kind of message does that send to your lead actress,
Right. It's just not professional behavior at all. And on top of that, Lively's alleging that Baldoni would make inappropriate comments about the bodies of the cast and crew, even asking her about her weight. Can you believe it?
Oh, come on. That's so gross. As if it's any of his business. This guy sounds like a real piece of work.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah.
And as if all that wasn't bad enough, she's saying that he went as far as adding unauthorized sex scenes to the script.
Unauthorized, like without her consent.
Yeah, and gets even worse. One of these scenes apparently involved an underage version of her character, like losing her virginity.
Oh my God. That is so disturbing. I mean, exploiting a minor story like that's just wrong on so many levels.
Yeah, it really crosses the line. And Lively claims that after they filmed that scene, Baldoni made inappropriate comments to the young actors who were in it.
Ugh, makes my skin crawl just thinking about it. This guy's supposed to be all about female empowerment, and yet he's doing stuff like this.
Right. It really makes you question everything. Like, how could someone who presents himself as a champion for women allegedly do all these things? It just doesn't add up.
So it's not just harassment we're talking about here. It's like a whole web of messed up stuff. It almost seems calculated,
Yeah, and that's where the alleged smear campaign comes in.
Yeah.
So Lively's lawsuit doesn't just stop at the harassment claims. She's also claiming that when she started pushing back against Baldoni's behavior, he and his team, went into overdrive to discredit her.
Wait, really? So they tried to silence her, basically?
Basically, they wanted to make it look like she was lying or crazy, the usual playbook.
Ugh, that's so messed up. But how do we know they actually did this? I mean, do we have any proof?
Lively actually included text messages in her lawsuit from Baldoni's publicist, and they're pretty damning. Like, in one message, the publicist straight up says that Baldoni wants to feel like Lively can be buried.
Wow. That is chilling. They were really out to get her, huh?
Yeah. And in another message, this is where it gets really interesting, the publicist says, and socials are really, really ramping up. In his favor, she must be furious. It's actually sad because it just shows you people really want to hate on women.
Whoa, hold on. So they're basically admitting to manipulating public opinion against her and using the whole women are always the crazy ones trope.
Sounds like it, right? It's like they're bragging about using public sentiment as a weapon.
This is messed up on so many levels. It's almost like they were banking on the fact that people would be more likely to believe a man over a woman, especially in Hollywood.
Exactly. And this tactic, sadly, could be pretty effective.
Yeah, for sure. And what makes it even more suspicious is that this same PR team, get this, also worked for Johnny Depp during his whole thing with Amber Heard.
Ooh, really?
Yeah.
That whole case was a media circus. And there was a lot of talk about how Depp's team used social media to sway public opinion in his favor.
Exactly. So knowing that this PR team has a history of using these kinds of tactics, it makes you wonder if they're pulling the same stunts with Baldoni, trying to paint him as the victim and Lively as the villain.
Totally. And if you look at that Reddit thread we mentioned earlier, you can actually see this playing out in real time.
Really? What are people saying?
It's a mixed bag. Some people are totally on Lively's side, but there are others who are questioning her story or bringing up her past behavior as a reason to not believe her.
Oh, come on. So they're basically trying to discredit her by digging up irrelevant stuff from her past. Classic victim blaming.
It's frustrating, right? Because even if someone has made mistakes in the past, it doesn't mean they can't be a victim of harassment or abuse.
Exactly. And that's exactly how these smear campaigns work. They plant these little seeds of doubt, and suddenly the focus shifts away from the actual accusations.
It's a distraction tactic, and it's honestly infuriating. But there's another piece of this puzzle that we need to talk about.
Okay, hit me with it. What else is there?
So in addition to the harassment allegations in the alleged smear campaign, there's Lively's list of demands, 30 of them to be exact, for returning to the set of It Ends With Us.
30 demands. That's a lot. What kind of demands are we talking about here? Like a bigger trailer or something?
These demands are way more serious than that. They really paint a picture of just how bad the situation allegedly was.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, for one, she demanded that there would be no more showing of those nude videos or images of women to her, and no more discussions about, personal sexual experiences while she was around.
Wait a minute. She had to specifically ask for that. Those should be basic workplace boundaries.
Exactly. You'd think that would go without saying, especially in a professional setting.
Right. It's like common decency, people. What else is on this list? I'm dying to know.
Okay, well, another one that really stood out was her demand that Baldoni would no longer be allowed to comment on her weight.
Oh, man. That's just sad. Like, she had to put a foot down and say, stop talking about my body. That just screams uncomfortable power dynamic.
Right. It's clear she was made to feel uncomfortable about her appearance, which is just another form of harassment. And then there's this.
Right.
She demanded that an intimacy coordinator be present for all the intimate scenes.
Okay, that makes sense. It's standard practice these days, right? To make sure actors feel safe and respected during those kinds of scenes.
Exactly. But the fact that she had to demand it suggests that maybe things weren't being handled appropriately before.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. It's like she had to lay down the law with this list of 30 demands, many of which should be basic workplace standards, just to feel safe enough to continue working on this film.
Yeah, it's a pretty disturbing picture. And you know what? To avoid a formal HR complaint, Lively agreed to these demands in exchange for a safer working environment.
Wow, that really speaks volumes, doesn't it? It's like they knew they were in the wrong, and they were willing to make concessions to avoid any official consequences.
Right. Makes you think. And we've really just scratched the surface here. There's still so much more to unpack.
I'm on the edge of my seat. What other bombshells are waiting for us in part 2?
Stay tuned, because in the next part of our deep dive, we'll be taking a closer look at some of Lively's other demands and what they reveal about those power dynamics on set. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.
So that list of demands, it's just crazy to think she had to spell all that out, just to feel safe at work.
Yeah. And there are a few more things on there that are really revealing. Like, she demanded a fully executed, totally by-the-book, SAG-compliant nudity writer for any scenes with nudity.
Okay, hold up. Back up for a sec.
Yeah.
For those of us who, aren't Hollywood insiders, break it down. What's a nudity writer? And why is it such a big deal in this situation?
Right. Good point. So a nudity writer is basically like an extra part of the contract that specifically lays out all the conditions for when an actor agrees to be nude on screen. How much nudity, the camera angles, who's allowed on set during filming, and that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay. So it's all about protecting the actor's comfort and making sure no one's taking advantage, right?
Exactly. So by demanding a SAG-compliant nudity writer, Lively was basically saying, hey, I don't feel like my boundaries were respected in those scenes with nudity before.
Wow. That really says a lot, doesn't it? She felt so vulnerable that she had to, spell it all out in black and white.
Yeah. And this feeling of, vulnerability is even more clear in another one of her demands. She asked for an A-list stunt double for any scenes with, violence or sexual assault.
An A-list stunt double. Okay, that's pretty unusual, right?
Yeah, most actors just, use stunt doubles for the really dangerous stuff. But to ask for an A-list one, someone with tons of experience,
yeah,
That shows how scared she must have been.
It's heartbreaking, honestly, to think that someone like Blake Lively, right, this huge star, would feel so unsafe on set that she needs, like, extra protection.
And it makes you wonder what exactly happened that made her feel that way. Like, what created this atmosphere of fear and distrust?
Right. Well, the lawsuit actually gives us some clues. So Lively describes these incidents where Baldoni and his producing partner, this guy named Heath, would just, like, barge into her trailer without knocking.
Hold up. Barge in while she was, like, changing clothes.
Yeah, and sometimes even worse, like when she was breastfeeding.
Wait, seriously? They just walked in on her while she was breastfeeding?
Yeah, even after she asked them to leave.
That's insane. So disrespectful. It's a total invasion of privacy.
Totally. Just no respect for her personal space or her basic dignity. And it goes back to that power imbalance we were talking about before, right? As the director and producer, they had all the power, and it seems like they totally abused it.
And it makes you think, was this happening to other people on set too? Or was Lively, like, singled out?
That's a really good question. I mean, the lawsuit doesn't really go into detail about anyone else's experiences, but it definitely makes you wonder.
Yeah, like, was this just, like, part of the culture on set? Were these guys just allowed to do whatever they wanted?
It's definitely possible. But, okay, you ready for another bombshell from the lawsuit?
Hit me with it.
So Lively claims that Baldoni cast his best friend in a scene that was pretty sensitive, like involving her genitalia.
Wait, seriously? He put his friend in a scene like that? With her?
Yeah, it's just like so inappropriate. It feels almost deliberate, like he was trying to humiliate her or something.
It just doesn't make any sense. And this whole lack of professionalism thing, it's like it went beyond just casting decisions. Lively also says she had to demand that the actors in intimate scenes be actual working actors, not just like the director's buddies or whatever.
Yeah, it's like they were treating the set like their own personal playground, right? No respect for the work or the people involved.
Yeah, it's messed up. And speaking of disrespect, it sounds like this unprofessionalism even like spilled over into how they were marketing the movie.
Oh, really? What happened?
So Lively says there was this whole disagreement about like how the movie's themes should be presented to the public. She wanted to focus on like her character's strength and resilience.
Which makes sense. It's a story about overcoming abuse, right?
Exactly. But apparently, Baldoni wanted to really play up the whole domestic violence angle.
That's interesting. And that's where the smear campaign comes back in, right?
Yeah, so Lively's thinking is that this disagreement like fueled that whole smear campaign. Baldoni was maybe trying to deflect attention from his own behavior and like regain control of the narrative.
Oh, so he's trying to like flip the script and make himself the victim.
Exactly. And unfortunately, this kind of tactic often works, right? We've seen it happen time and again, especially in high-profile cases like this. The media gets all caught up in the drama, and the real issues get lost in the noise.
It's a reminder that we really need to be careful about what we believe, especially when it comes to stories like this where there's so much at stake.
And speaking of what we believe, it's time to check back in with the court of public opinion. What are people saying about all this on that Reddit thread we mentioned?
Oh, it's a real mixed bag. Some people are totally Team Lively, believing her and calling out Baldoni for his behavior.
And others?
Well, there are some who are, more skeptical. Maybe they're questioning her motives or bringing up things from her past to try and discredit her.
Ugh, that's so frustrating. It's like, why are we still doing this in 2024? Why is it so hard to just believe women when they come forward with these kinds of stories?
I know. It's a reminder that no matter how much progress we think we've made, there's still so much work to do. We have to keep challenging those old ways of thinking, those biases that make it so hard for survivors to be heard and believed.
Well said. And, this whole thing is so much bigger than just Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. It's about a system that allows this kind of abuse to happen over and over again.
Exactly. It's about power and who has it and how they use it. And it's about time we hold those in power accountable for their actions.
Absolutely. We can't let this be swept under the rug. So stay with us because in the final part of this deep dive, we're going to explore what could happen next. Like, what are the legal ramifications of all this? What kind of precedent could this case set? We'll be back after the break. All right, so we've spent the last two parts of this deep dive really getting into the nitty-gritty of Lively's accusations, that alleged smear campaign, and like all those wild demands she had to make.
Yeah, it's been pretty heavy stuff. Makes you think, right?
Totally. So as we wrap things up here, I'm curious, what's your take on the bigger picture? Like, what does this whole situation tell us about, Hollywood? And what could the fallout be, for everyone involved?
Well, at first glance, this whole thing might seem like, oh, another Hollywood scandal, right? But when you really dig into it, it points to some deeper issues that have been around for way too long.
Like that.
We're talking about power imbalances, silencing women who speak out, and a culture that often, protects abusers.
So it's bigger than just these two people.
Exactly. Remember the #MeToo movement, all those stories that came out. This case kind of makes you wonder, has anything really changed?
Yeah, you're right. It seems like those in power are still using their influence to take advantage of others.
Yep. And then they try to silence anyone who speaks up.
Speaking of, Lively filed a lawsuit, right? But honestly, what are the chances she'll actually get justice? It feels like we've seen so many cases where powerful people just get away with everything.
Yeah, you're right. The legal system doesn't always work in favor of survivors, but this case could be different.
Really? Why?
Well, Lively's got a lot of evidence. I mean, those text messages from Baldoni's publicist, those are pretty damning.
Yeah, they're bad.
If those are allowed in court, they could really hurt his case.
And what about Baldoni's career? He's, Mr. woke feminist. These accusations got to be hurting his image.
Totally. Even if he doesn't lose the lawsuit, just the accusations alone are causing a lot of damage. People are angry.
I bet. So basically, even if he doesn't face legal consequences, he's already facing, the court of public opinion.
Exactly. And that can be just as powerful,
It's true. It's actions have consequences. So this whole thing could really affect his future.
Yeah.
Getting work and stuff.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Speaking of playing out, beyond just these two people, what kind of precedent could this case set for Hollywood as a whole?
Well, think about it. If Lively wins, it could empower other survivors to come forward. It could show them that, hey, even powerful people can be held accountable.
That'd be huge.
Right. And it might force studios to finally take this stuff seriously, actually protect their actors and make things safer.
So this could be a turning point.
It has the potential, yeah. But real change, that takes all of us, It's not just about lawsuits, it's about changing the whole culture.
Yeah.
Creating a space where everyone feels safe, respected, and they can actually speak up.
That's a great point. Wow, this deep dive has been really eye-opening. I've got a lot to think about now.
Me too. It just shows you that things aren't always what they seem,
Yeah. We can't just take everything at face value.
We gotta be critical thinkers, listen to each other, and use our voices to fight for what's right.
Love that. And to everyone listening out there, don't let this be the end of the conversation,
Yeah, keep digging, read those sources, do your research, and talk about this stuff with your friends, family, everyone.
Because staying silent, that just protects the abusers. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive here on CrushTalk, and we'll see you next time for more conversations that matter.